Hello, second grade readers. My name is Miss Taylor, and I am very excited that you are going to be in my reading class this year. So, welcome! Like my little image there. Alrighty, so welcome to reading class. Now, you will notice on the slide here that you will need a few things for reading class. One of them is this book. It says Reading Mastery Signature Edition and has a lion on the cover. And hopefully you got this when you came to school last week. And you will also need a workbook. Looks like this. And yours should have your name, just as mine has my name. All right, so you need those couple of things for reading class to start the year. Also, if you have your textbook, and you will notice if you open it up, I put a couple of bookmarks in. I think I put 2 of them in there. So those can also be helpful to kind of track along as we read. So let's see, are we ready to read? So here are some things that you will need each time we have our reading class. So I already mentioned a couple things under materials. So you will need your textbook. And if you have that bookmark, or really any bookmark, would be a really great idea to follow along. So as we're reading, it's a really good idea to follow along either with your finger or a bookmark. So kind of whatever you feel comfortable doing. But if I was using this as my big bookmark, it's kind of nice to be able to follow along and track as we read. It just kind of helps us to follow along. So textbook, bookmark, workbook, and a pencil. And when you have all of those things, check, you are ready to read. All right, so some things to remember for our reading class is to either try your best to kind of track with your finger or a bookmark, and that's really good for our brains to kind of follow along as we read. As we get to be, quite fluent readers, we can just track with our eyes, but it's always helpful, always a prudent idea, to give your brain a little bit of extra help by seeing those lines and spaces and things like that with your finger. We're going to try to look at each word carefully, paying attention to the endings of words and the beginnings, and just being very careful readers, paying attention to end marks. So when we have a period, we're going to pause, and then we're going to continue. And of course, we're going to try to enjoy the story and the stories. All right, some of our goals this year are to read with accuracy and expression. So accuracy means reading with few mistakes, although of course we all make mistakes. And when we do, we just get out our giant eraser. Oh, hi kitty. And we fix our mistakes. Bob likes reading. Don't you, Bob? Do you want to say hi? Whoops. I'm making a little video from my reading class. Do you want to say hi? Hi, Bob. This is Bob. She likes reading. She's a good reader. Okay. Thank you, Bob. All right. So where were we? We're going to read with accuracy, and that means really paying attention to each word and reading carefully and try to have few mistakes. And then when we practice, we get fewer and fewer mistakes. And expression. And expression means reading with feeling. And it also means that we can read the way that we talk. Another way to say this is that we're working on reading fluently. And when we read fluently, it means we're reading in a similar way that we talk. So we have feeling when we talk. And we're going to understand what's happening in the story. We're going to try to make connections to how the characters feel. Those are just a few of the goals of reading. There's all kinds of things that are happening in our brains when we read. And I think this is really exciting and really amazing, all the things that are happening in our brains. But these are a few of our goals as we read. So we're going to read with accuracy and expression. We're going to understand what's happening in the story. And we're going to make some connections to characters like, oh, that happened to me once, or I've had that same feeling. And a lot of times those connections are what make reading really enjoyable. All right, so I mentioned that there's a lot of things going on as we read. There's a lot going on in our brains. In fact, there's so many things going on in our brains as we read that some people have likened reading to sort of a symphony or an orchestra, that there's all kinds of instruments playing, just like there's all kinds of things going on in our brains, all kinds of different thinking and synthesizing and making connections. And so this is just a little um, display that I made for the school last year. And I thought, oh, this is good to show my reading students. So reading is thinking. And these little thought bubbles that you see there are just a few of the things that are happening in our brains as we read. And some of them we're not even aware of. But it's really helpful if we start to become more aware, and then we are more grateful for all of the things our brain is doing as we're reading. So one of them is making connections. So thinking about, oh, that happened to me once, or I had that feeling. Another thing is to visualize. So we're going to work on kind of painting pictures of what's happening in the story, and kind of painting a picture in our minds. Asking questions. So a lot of times when we're reading, we're kind of thinking and wondering and asking questions. We also summarize, and summarize means we kind of retell the important ideas about like what happened in a story. Because after we read a story, we can't remember all the details. So when we summarize, we kind of remember the main point or the main idea. In other words, what is worth remembering from a story. And then we do some predicting. So when we're reading, we're constantly predicting what's going to happen next. And then when we read what happens next, we think, oh, I was right in my prediction, or oh, that I wasn't correct in my prediction. And then we predict again. And so we're always predicting. We are synthesizing, and that kind of means making sense of new information. And then we're also inferring. And another way that we can think of inferring is kind of reading between the lines, or thinking about, well, what is really happening here? Even though it doesn't always say what's happening in the story, we can figure it out by using the text evidence, what happens in the story, and then using what we already know, kind of our background knowledge. So these are just some of the amazing things that are happening as we are reading. Reading is thinking. Oh, Bob's back. Hi, Kitty. Are you thinking as you read? Yep. Okay. So for our reading lessons, this is how our reading lessons will go. So first we have some words. We have kind of our word list, our vocabulary words, and sometimes those are the tougher words. And it's really prudent that we kind of practice those first, because we want to work on reading accurately and fluently. And so we're going to do some word lists first. And then part B, we have a nonfiction passage, and that is facts and true things. Nonfiction means real stuff. Our nonfiction passage, and our first story is about geese and migration. So we're going to learn a little bit about geese. And then part C, we have a main story, and that is kind of the fiction story, or the not real, kind of make-believe story. Can be realistic, but usually it's not real. It's a fiction story. And then part D, we have a little bit of review that we'll look at, kind of some of those questions. And then we have a couple pages in our workbook to do. I'm going to be asking you to submit some photos of your homework. And then after you do your reading work in your workbook, then I would like you to read for 20 more minutes. And this means reading anything that you would like. So whether it's picture books or chapter books, or about any kind of different topics, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, or a biography or a fantasy or a science fiction, or all kinds of things. So that is what our reading lesson is going to look like. So yeah, I am excited to read with you all. We're going to get started on reading this week, but today your assignment is to just think about what our reading lessons are going to look like, and kind of get ready for reading and get ready for the week. So again, let me kind of go back to, are you ready to read? And thinking about, do you have all of your items, including textbook, workbook, bookmark, pencil? All right. So I look forward to seeing you all very soon. We're going to get started very soon, but today's assignment is just to see, do you know how to be ready for reading? So have a wonderful day, and I will see you all very soon, readers. All right. Bye.